So welcome to the Hennepin-University Partnership webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Solving Systemic Issues with the Resilient Communities Project, a Ramsey County case study, and is presented by Stina Kielsmeyer-Cook, Mike Greco, and Abby Phillips. My name is Sophia Latkins, and I'm a graduate assistant with the Hennepin-University Partnership. We are also joined by HUP Director Amy Delahanty. The Hennepin-University Partnership is a strategic partnership between the University of Minnesota and Hennepin County that aims to connect these organizations at points of mutual benefit. We aim to catalyze research partnerships, engage students by providing experiences that enrich learning and build a future workforce, and share expertise, best practices, and knowledge, something we hope we'll do today. Before we get started, just a few Zoom reminders for our audience. Your video, audio, and chat are not enabled. If you need any support from the HUP team, please use the Q&A function. If you'd like to ask a question, you can submit that through the Q&A function as well. We will monitor for questions throughout and save time to address them at the end. And this webinar will be recorded. A huge thank you to our presenters for sharing their time and research with us. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Please look for an email from hup@umn.edu with a survey and a link to the recorded webinar video tomorrow. And finally, we are so glad to welcome and introduce the presenter. Stina Kielsmeyer-Cook is the program coordinator of the Resilient Communities Project at the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs at the University of Minnesota, where she is also a part-time graduate student in the Masters of Public Affairs program. Mike Greco is the director of the Resilient Communities Project, and Abby Phillips is a climate and health program supervisor at Ramsey County. Now, I will turn it over to them for the presentation.
Thanks so much for that introduction and welcome. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for being here. As Sophie already said, my name is Stina Kielsmeyer-Cook, and I am one of two staff members here in the Resilient Communities Project, along with Mike Greco, who is the co-founder and director of the Resilient Communities Project. And we're so excited to be here with you today. So today's agenda is that we are going to first do an overview of what is RCP, Resilient Communities Project, and how does the program work. We're going to jump into a great case study with one of our wonderful partners in Ramsey County. And we just recently opened our program for applications for partnerships for the next academic year, 2025-2026. So we'll talk a little bit about what that application process looks like. And then finally, we'll have an opportunity for questions from participants. So as you're listening to us talk, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So to start off, what is RCP? We are a research and technical assistance program, and we serve local government agencies here in Minnesota. As Sophie described, we are housed within the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, and that is actually the umbrella research center where the Hennepin-University Partnership also sits, so we're kind of sister programs. One thing that's unique about us is that we work with any local government entity throughout the whole state of Minnesota, and our partners change from year to year. Our mission is to connect local government agencies with students and faculty to work collaboratively on projects that advance sustainability and that enhance student learning. So we have a mutually beneficial partnership model where we're looking at serving communities in Minnesota, but also helping provide a really great, robust professional development opportunity for students who are studying here at the university. So to be eligible to work with the Resilient Communities Project, you must be a local government entity within the state, but that can be, not just a county or city government. It could also be a special district. It could be, a transit or conservation district or school district. And we also have a special partnership with the Met Council for those agencies that reside within the 7-county Twin Cities Metro. We have matching funds available for projects that help implement one or more elements of a locally adopted comprehensive plan. So that is something that's kind of cool about metro area local government partners. They have that opportunity. So this is the 13th year that RCP has been around. And in that time, we've worked with a variety of different partner communities on nearly 300 projects. And so we have two different kind of ways of looking at our projects. Our partnerships. Our large-scale partnerships usually involve 10 to 15 or more projects. And we also have smaller scale partnerships that have between 1 to 5 projects. And beyond, just the number of projects involved, these partnerships differ in a few ways. In the larger scale partnerships, it requires a kind of broader community commitment in terms of staff, time, and financial resources. Typically involves a broader set of projects across the entire organization. And the partnership is designed to create a lot of energy around the collaboration with the university. Sometimes we'll do things like do a community-wide kickoff event or a celebratory end-of-year event. We might try to generate some local media interest and opportunities for community input, like having an open house. These larger scale partnerships tend to be longer, about 18 months. The smaller scale partnerships are usually more focused collaborations. They involve fewer staff. Often just maybe a handful of departments are involved and are for a shorter length of time, usually about 6 to 12 months. Oftentimes we'll have a partnership that is large scale and then have that same community come back to us later to work on some smaller scale partnerships, which we'll see in a few slides later about our Ramsey County partnerships. So this slide has a lot of text on it. It's kind of overwhelming, but it serves to illustrate that the Resilient Communities Project can serve as a front door to the university. We have worked with over 58 different academic departments and have had more than 3,000 students and faculty engaged in our projects. So if you're looking to connect with the University of Minnesota, we are a great way to do that. So the way that our model works is that our partners are matched with usually courses, and the research and technical assistance projects are carried out by usually graduate and professional students. So one thing to know about working with students is that these are not professionals. These are people who are in school, who are still learning, and they may not have a lot of experience working in a professional setting or working specifically with local government. So some of the best projects that work well with students are when it's kind of a pre-consulting sort of project. So kind of an initial research or investigation, ideation, kind of foundational work that can help get a project kickstarted. So if you have one way of thinking about what would be a great RCP project is, do you have an issue or idea that requires a lot of creativity or innovation, where you need a lot of different perspectives or multiple concept ideas, maybe data collection or analysis, best practices or precedent research, or other kinds of foundational work. Those are things that students are really great at. And the way that we typically engage students through our projects is in 4-credit courses. So we partner with faculty to embed our projects into courses that are being taught at the University of Minnesota. Usually that is in the graduate school level, but sometimes we'll work with undergraduates as well. And we also have a summer scholars program where we do hire some students over the summer to work specifically on community-based projects. So we think that there are a lot of great benefits to partnering with RCP. There's a lot more that we hear in our surveys from community partners about the benefits. The ones that we hear most often are the ones that are listed here on the slides. And I just want to highlight a few things that RCP can really help multiply your organization's capacity by providing hundreds of hours of student time. If you think about trying to hire an equivalent number of students as interns for the same amount of time, it would probably cost 2 to 3 times as much. Or if you were hiring a consultant, that can also be a lot more expensive. You also get the benefit of a lot of creative new ideas. Students are great at, applying the latest theory that they're learning in their academic courses to real-world problems. You get a lot of innovative design plans, evidence-based policy recommendations, and fresh perspectives that can spark new thinking and energize your staff and get things that are stuck moving. They also can help expand the conversation. We find that students are great at engaging stakeholders and community members in low stakes and non-threatening ways. Many communities tell us that working through RCP has helped to initiate or deepen relationships with external stakeholders, as well as internal staff and other departments, or to raise awareness among the public about why an issue is important. And finally, working with RCP can help provide increased credibility. If you're getting a final report that's coming from the university, that can be seen as maybe more objective and credible than if that same recommendation was coming from a staff person. Students can also help you test the waters on riskier solutions. They can make recommendations that are a little bit more outside of the box that maybe an internal staff member wouldn't be able to make. And they can create a lot of space for good discussion. So our process is, like I said earlier, very collaborative. We start off by receiving an idea, an application from our community potential partner, and that's how these projects are initiated. They are ideas that are in the community that come to us, and our partner communities are included in every single step of the process. Once we receive your application and we decide that this is a great fit, we help you kind of refine and scope your idea so that it is a good match for a university course. Any kind of match that we make between your project with a university course must be agreed to by the community partner. So if you don't find that a certain course that we're proposing is a good match, you let us know that and we keep looking. Each project is usually matched with 2 different courses over the course of the academic year. Students then complete the projects, and as they're working throughout the semester, the partner community and RCP are on hand to kind of help meet with them, usually weekly, throughout the semester to guide their work, provide feedback, answer questions, and that sort of thing. And then finally, students will deliver their presentations and work products to an audience of your choice. Oftentimes that can be things like city council, presentation to county commissioners, citizen advisory committees, to your senior staff, or even to the public. So now we're going to get into our case study of showing kind of how RCP has helped create systemic change in one of our community partner locations, and in this case, Ramsey County. So in the 2018 and 2019 academic year, we had a large-scale partnership with Ramsey County, and we had 14 projects. There was 25 county staff that were involved in the partnership, and they worked with more than 180 graduate, professional, and undergraduate students across 22 University of Minnesota courses, representing 16 academic departments at the university. And you see here on the slide, you can see the kind of clusters of topics that these projects were housed under. And I do have a handout if you're interested that shows what exactly those projects were in each kind of category. I'm going to just highlight a few of the projects that we did in this initial large-scale partnership. One was called the Voting in Frogtown project. The Ramsey County elections manager told a group of undergraduate students that we had matched with that, we want you to talk to your peers in St. Paul to figure out why individuals aren't voting. And so that's that initial match. You can see down there was a political science class. It was a group of undergraduates. And those students collected surveys from 240 voters on election day, which was enough to lend the results of their analysis statistical significance. And then 4 student teams reported on the key themes that emerged from their analysis of the post-election surveys, as well as actionable recommendations that could increase voter turnout among youth and communities of color. And then there was another match with a capstone class within the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. And that group did research on how to increase youth voter turnout using a racial equity framework. And they had a series of recommendations for how the county could better invest in community partnerships and run a targeted social media campaign to reach those voters. Now for this next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Mike Greco to talk more.
Thanks, Tina. This next project was with the social services departments at Ramsey County, and they were interested in thinking more deeply about culturally appropriate crisis intervention programs specifically working with underserved and underrepresented communities that they were finding were not taking advantage of some of the social service programs that they had at the time. And we ended up matching this project with two different courses as well. The first one was a family science and social, or family social science program. And we had two students who took part in a research internship and did some foundational work on the project, doing some case studies, looking for best practices for working with folks through crisis intervention kinds of programs, and then worked with an entire class of social work students, graduate students. These were students in the final semester of their program. There were about 20 students in the course. And when we started talking to the faculty member for this course, she suggested that the county choose one particular underrepresented group that they'd like to focus on, because obviously, if we're talking about culturally appropriate interventions, we need to be thinking about what specific cultures we're talking about. So the county chose the Karen. If you're not familiar with them, they're refugees from Myanmar, formerly Burma, war-torn country, and they've experienced a lot of trauma in their home country. And the students did a really deep dive in the Karen culture, talked to many service providers, but also to individuals and families in the Karen community to sort of understand their reluctance to participate in some of these programs. And probably the most significant finding was that the kind of terminology that Ramsey County and Western practitioners in general use, talking about things like depression or trauma, that those really don't have a good analog in the Karen culture. And this term, a heavy heart, was the way that within the Karen culture, what we might think of in the West as depression is talked about. And so it was a very useful example for the county to look at, and got them started thinking more deeply about other cultures that they needed to think about and accommodate if they were hoping to have some of these underrepresented communities participate in some of their programs. And the next slide. So this third project was quite different. It came to us from the energy planner and sustainability planner, energy and sustainability planner at Ramsey County. And she was interested in finding ways to assist cities within the county with their climate mitigation and climate adaptation efforts, trying to figure out what resources the county could provide to cities. And so again, we had two matches for this project. The first one was with a Sustainable Communities capstone. This was for undergraduate students, but again, in their last semester of school. And they actually interviewed sustainability planners and land use planners at the city level in Ramsey County to understand what some of their current efforts were, what kind of assistance the county might provide, ways that they might coordinate with each other. When we matched this with the second course, it was with the capstone course at the Humphrey School in the Science, Technology, and Environmental Policy area. And these students suggested taking a slightly different approach. They spent the first few weeks of the semester interviewing staff at the county and discovered that there really was not much coordination within the county itself in terms of the county's climate efforts. And they suggested that before trying to assist cities, the county might think about how to better coordinate internally its own work. And so you can see a number of recommendations that they provided at the bottom of this slide. One of the most significant ones was hiring a resilience manager. And so I'm going to turn things over to our guest, Abby Phillips from Ramsey County, who can talk a little bit about where this project ended up going during her time at Ramsey County.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike. Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Phillips. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm Ramsey County's Climate and Health Program Supervisor. Initially, I was hired as a climate and health planner, which was the county's answer to the students' recommendation to hire a resilience manager. So pretty exciting result from that report. It took a few years for the county to take action on that recommendation, but it did ultimately turn into a full-time permanent position. I was hired about 3 years ago, and a couple of months after I was hired, RCP opened up their call for applications. I was hired to create a new program for the county, and it became clear really quickly that it was a county-wide initiative, not just a public health initiative. So I was really excited by the opportunity to get some help in thinking through what this new program would look like and what the county needed in the kind of first few months of my work. So I proposed 2 projects to our RCP. One of them was internally focused, looking at more specifically what resources and specific positions, in addition to mine, the county needed to expand the work we were doing. And the other one was externally focused on how best to engage with under-recognized and climate vulnerable communities to inform the work that we were pushing forward. So that first project was split between 2 classes. The first class was a public policy class, I believe, focused on identifying strategies and resources to empower county employees to reframe and refine their approach to work in alignment with climate action. And that group of students did a ton of work conducting case studies of comparable governments. They interviewed folks all over the country, really, to learn about what other counties were doing in relation to climate action. And then they conducted a gap analysis with 2 of our county departments, Public Health and Parks and Recreation, in order to provide recommendations and next steps for those specific departments based on the case study work that they did in other places. And that gap analysis that they conducted has turned into a model that I'm starting to use now, a couple of years later, to help other departments across the county system understand where they have gaps and where they have opportunities and what resources we need to identify to support their work. The second semester of that project was a human resources course that took a copy of our climate equity action plan and turned it into a really user-friendly spreadsheet that the county or I could use to track goals we had in relation to this work, as well as progress made, and then use that spreadsheet as a way to identify staff capacity needs and have conversations around those needs. The group also took a stab at developing a list of needed positions, the job descriptions to go alongside those positions, and I think most importantly, a case to make with leadership to convince the county exec team that these positions were worth investing in. Around the same time that I was working with those students, I was also working with an outside consultant to finalize our climate equity action plan, and I shared the students' recommendations for staffing with that consultant, and the consultant ended up using the students' recommendations in their final report. So it became not only a student recommendation or a set of student recommendations, but a professional set of recommendations from this outside consultant. And now, again, a couple of years later, we're continuing to talk about what those positions could look like. And I'm sure you all know in Hennepin County that sometimes things take time, but I feel confident that we'll be developing more of those positions soon, very much thanks to the work the students did on that project. And then lastly, the project that was external facing was with an urban planning student group, a really large class. I think there were 25 students involved in this project. And they were in acknowledgement that climate change has greater severity in racially and ethnically diverse and socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. They were trying to identify target communities for engagement around climate action, develop strategies for engagement that were culturally sensitive and authentic or not extractive, develop evaluation tools for learning, continuous learning as we move forward with engagement, and then offering recommendations and next steps to the county in our climate action engagement process. We've used a lot of those tools since then. We've hired a full-time outreach and engagement coordinator focused on climate action and developed an advisory council of residents who come together on a regular basis. Both of those were recommendations from the student group. And we've adapted the evaluation tool and some of the engagement strategies that they proposed through the project for use iteratively over time. And then lastly, I'll just say that I worked with RCP before Stina came on board. So I just worked directly with Mike, and he was hugely supportive and very flexible in the way we designed these projects. So it was a really enjoyable experience, both from working with RCP, but also getting to work with all of these students who were super excited, not jaded by their professional work they'd been doing, and very interested in developing a high quality product.
Thank you, Abby. If you have questions for Abby too, please start putting them in the chat and she'll be available to answer any more about specific Ramsey County questions you might have. So we're moving to kind of that next phase of our agenda where we're talking a little bit more about applications, the fact that, we have an opportunity right now for folks in Hennepin County to apply to RCP. Our applications are open. And so we want to talk a little bit more about some of the different project issue areas that you might consider. We've covered a lot already in the examples with Ramsey County, but also wanted to highlight, we do a lot of projects in transportation. We work a lot with parks and recreation, administration, human resources. There's a lot of different possibilities for how RCP can be a support to your agency. And so much of this process is in that initial ideation. You come to us with an idea and we help you think creatively about how the university and RCP can help address your needs. So we work actively to help scope that into something that is manageable. If you have a project that you're passionate about and a willingness to engage with students, it's more likely than not that there's some part of the University of Minnesota that can add value. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us after this presentation to talk about your idea. What makes a good project? I think we've covered this a little bit already, but just wanted to highlight that, anything that is really issue that's coming to the forefront, that's timely, that is ripe for consideration, that would really benefit from an outside perspective. Maybe you're feeling stuck, you need some expertise that you don't have in-house, but maybe you can't hire a consultant because either that's too expensive or the project is larger than what one person could adequately address. And maybe you've got some time to engage with a student team. That would suggest that you would be a good candidate for RCP. Also, projects that have a strong desire for community voice to be part of the solution is something that we are particularly interested in. We also want to see some buy-in from senior staff and elected officials potentially who can champion this project within your agency. That is something we look at as well. And I think if you're knowing why you're asking the university to assist you with this work and how you'll put it to use, that is kind of the foundation for a positive project. You can take this research and run with it. We want it to not just be sitting on a shelf or in a library somewhere. We want it to be put to use. So in order to actually select a project, coming to this webinar is a great place to start. You can have conversations with your colleagues. We also have a great kind of treasure trove of project ideas from partners we've worked with in the past, and we've worked with other counties, including Carver County and Scott County. We have the list of projects from Ramsey County. But we would just really encourage you to start having some of these conversations, look at the range of project needs that you might have across your agency. Where does the U of M have particular capacity in some of our departmental work? And just start having some of those conversations. And I know that, Amy Delhanty from the Hennepin-University Partnership is also here on this webinar. And if you're curious about having some broader conversations, she would be a great person to talk to about how to convene a group. So like I said, our applications are currently open. We are available in January, not just February, but through April to have any conversations with you to discuss project ideas. We're available to do other presentations if you have other people that weren't here at this webinar. I think there'll be a link you can share to the recording later, but we are also happy to come and do an additional presentation if that's helpful. April 15th is the priority deadline for our fall 2025 partnerships. And if you are selected, regardless, we would notify you in May if you are able to be a partner of ours for the coming academic year. There's a lot more information on our website. There's a Z link there at the bottom of the slide that you can look at that has a full RFP packet with more information about what applications, what's required as part of an application. But just broadly, we need your information, a list of your proposed projects, which would include who within your staff would be the lead, describing the key issues, impact, what are some other additional partners or stakeholders that would be part of that project. We would also need a demonstration of support to show that there are other folks within your agency who are on board with the project. And then if you are interested in seeking Met Council matching funds, if that project is in conformance with an adopted comp plan, making that case so that you can be considered for that matching fund. These are some of the criteria that we look at for selecting our partners. I'll let you guys kind of just look at the list here. But I think really, we're excited about projects that you're passionate about that have a really clearly formulated issue or question. And again, this is something we can work with you on. So if you're not quite there yet with a clear focus, we're happy to talk through and help you refine that. I also want to call out community engagement. If you have, this is not applicable for all projects, but where it is appropriate, projects that include a commitment to meaningfully engage through the partnership with residents or other stakeholders who are directly affected by the issue is something that we value as well. So we encourage you to consider that as well. RCP does charge for our support. We have different funding structure based on the number of projects that we do with a local government entity. For 3 to 5 projects, it's $8,000 per project. Between 5 to 9, it's $7,000 per project. And then if you're doing a larger scale partnership with us, which is 10 or more, we have an individual conversation with you to talk about pricing. If you do end up receiving that Met Council match, then it's $4,000 per project. This is a list of different funding sources that other local government entities have used to be able to pay for RCP partnerships. There's a lot of sources that you could tap to use, but regardless of where the funds are obtained from, we do ask that applicants act as the sole fiscal agent for the partnership. So now we're moving into our kind of Q&A and kind of opportunity to have more conversation. I invite you to put questions in the Q&A, and also if you want to you could also write out a project idea that you have that you are looking for input on. But with that kind of concludes our presentation. I want to put up our website information here and how you can get a hold of us. And yes, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to present to you all this morning and invite questions.
Thank you to our presenters for a great presentation. As a reminder, there is not a chat function, but there is a Q&A function. It'll be at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And that's where you can throw in some questions for the presenting team here.
Hi, Stina and Mike. This is Amy over at Hub. One question that came to mind as people might be percolating is when you're thinking about, you mentioned a couple times where there was, you matched with more than one course. And I was curious if that was something that you found that from the initial scoping, okay, this might be kind of chunked out or sequenced in a way that's over 2 courses, or if there were any examples of projects where where a question was started and realized, okay, the findings from this one course or this one student's project actually lended towards continuing on. And so I was just kind of curious about, whether that was a pre-decision or kind of being flexible and matching to an additional course later on.
I can take that one. I think both of those happen, Amy, just depending on the nature of the project. We do have a lot of projects where we know going in that it's the question that our partner wants an answer to is going to be too big for one team of students to tackle. And so we work with them up front to think about how to sequence the project over a couple of different courses, probably a couple of different academic semesters, so that we can answer, the entire question. But there are cases where often, what we find in the first match with the first set of students determines the direction we go in the next one. And I think both of the projects that I talked about are good examples of that, where, it became pretty clear to the capstone team that the work of the undergraduate students talking to individual cities about their climate, needs, that the county itself hadn't really coordinated among departments and divisions to talk through its own overarching strategy. And so that was the decision that was made with the capstone team to focus more on that, to focus more internally on the county instead of what kind of external assistance they could provide. So I think both of those things happen. We try to be reasonable up front in terms of what we expect students to be able to accomplish in a semester. To the extent that we can do it in a sequenced manner and know that going in, I think we often get better results as a consequence.
Hi, this is Margaret from HUP. I also had a quick question around time commitment and capacity requirements on the partner side. So you talked a little bit about what makes for a good project in terms of looking for different perspectives or kind of that foundational work, but I'm curious how else a department could know if they were, kind of prepared to be a good partner.
Yeah, good question, Margaret. We tell project leads. So first, we ask that every project idea brought to us also include a staff person who's been identified who will serve as the project lead. And that means they'll be working with us to scope the project up front, to identify which courses seem like suitable matches. They'll be meeting with students, as Stina said, probably on a weekly basis. Most of those meetings are done over Zoom, although, if you're close to the university, we can do those in person as well. And we tell those folks to anticipate that they will spend, on average, 3 to 5 hours per week per project. And I think, we hear that consistently back from project leads, that that's about how much time it's taken us. Abby actually worked with, multiple teams in one course, and I think actually on multiple projects at the same time. And so I don't know if she has any thoughts to share about what that means in terms of time commitment, but it definitely is a commitment of time. There's no question about that. And I think you will get out of the project what you put into it. And so if you're sort of an absentee project lead, chances are the students are not going to do nearly as good a job as they would if you were an active participant.
Yeah, Mike, I would to that the more students you're working with, I think the more time you should be able to commit. I felt like I didn't have quite enough time to commit to the large group of students. I would have liked to be able to devote my whole week to supporting them, really. But all of the other projects I worked on besides that one, all 3 of them had groups of like 5 students, and it felt like 3 to 5 hours was a really accurate amount of time to support them throughout the project. There might have been weeks where it went above that, but for the most part, 3 to 5 was comfortable.
And Stina stays very actively involved in all these projects as well. So she's attending the weekly meetings with students. And I think, if we know that there are time limits to how much you can put into the project. That's something we can anticipate up front. We can also be there as sort of a buffer with the students, making sure that when we're meeting with you, it's really critical that we be meeting with you and not just meeting with Stina. If it's more of an administrative issue the students have to deal with, and it doesn't require, actually meeting with the project lead. So I'd say if that seems like too much of a commitment, don't discount the possibility of a partnership. Let's have a conversation and we can talk about what the constraints are in your time and how RCP can help fill that gap if the time commitment seems like it might be too much.
Abby, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to just around your experience of working with students on these projects. I know that we've talked before kind of, about how it's kind of had this ripple effect in lots of different areas. But yeah, do you have any words of advice or any experiences you'd want to share, I guess, around what it's like to be in that project lead seat, working with these different teams on issues and having multiple different student perspectives?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Stina. I'd say largely and kind of generally, it's just really fun. Like students are fun to work with. So it makes these projects kind of exciting in the way that some other professional work isn't. But something I learned in managing multiple groups of students or managing projects with multiple groups of students over the course of the semester was that it is really important to set clear expectations and deliverables. And I think in one of our projects, I can't quite remember which one it was now, I was a little unclear about what I wanted to come out of the project at the end of the semester. And ultimately, we just didn't, the project didn't yield a report because I didn't know exactly what direction to send the students in. And Mike and Stina will help folks hone in on what deliverables and expectations to set before a project, but I just recommend that any partner really take time to think through what you want to walk away with, what kind of tool it is, or what kind of research back to report it is. And also note that students have other classes that they're involved with at the same time, and those classes will have periods of greater demand on them, and so they'll disappear for a week or two at a time, but they'll come back. They have advisors that are responsible for making sure that they're good partners to you too. So understanding, and I think Stina, you touched on this, that they're not your professional colleagues. They have other commitments and priorities that they're navigating as well, and that's part of the project.
Yeah, and I'll say, I'm fairly new to RCP. I've been working here for just about a year now. And, Mike has been with the program from the very beginning, has 13 years of experience working with these different projects and has seen all sorts of different, kinds of scopes and teams. And we have a lot of really great processes in place to kind of help keep things on the rails so that, if there are issues that are coming up with a student group, RCP is there and we're in every meeting that you're having with students to kind of say, hey, let's check in about that. How are you feeling? Are you getting what you need? So that there is time to kind of course correct before you're all the way through the end of the semester. And we want everyone to get what they need out of the partnership. And so that is one real strong value add for RCP is having a lot of that project management support so that hopefully by the end of the semester, everyone is, getting that tool that you need to be able to advance your work in the county. And then the students are also having this great professional learning opportunity.
One other thing I just thought of, Stina, is that in every project, I told the students that what I really wanted from them was to critique my work, to critique the direction the county was going in, and to offer suggestions that might be kind of out there and might not be exactly in alignment with what the county is or where the county is headed, because I, as a county employee, I can't do that all the time, but students can. So if you're looking for like innovation in a different direction or to push the county to do something that they aren't doing already, students can kind of be the catalyst for that conversation. And then you as an employee can say, hey, supervisor, what do you think about this interesting recommendations the students came up with? And see where that goes.
Well, Sina, Mike, and Abby, I just want to say from the Hennepin-University Partnership, it's really that this has been such an amazing presentation. I've also learned a lot more, even though we're sister programs here within Kira. And for the county folks on this call, you know, from a hub, we just wanted to offer another tool in the suite of options in working with the university. We know you have a lot of choices. I know SPY, Strategic Planning Initiatives, is on the call today. There are internal resources that can be brought to bear on your project ideas. And where it's applicable and best and highest value to use the university, we wanted to ensure that you all were aware of such a gem of a resource here and at the U. So that was part of the intent of inviting Mike and Stina and Abby to come. And Abby in particular, thank you so much for donating your time.
Yeah, I'll just echo Amy and say thank you all for presenting. And then to our audience, thank you all for being here. And we'll close out the session a little bit early. So for our audience members, stay tuned for an email from hub@umn.edu tomorrow that'll include the recording and some resources from our RCPT.
Thanks
Thanks
so
for
much.
having us. We appreciate it.